In this video, we're going to post-process and analyze some data from a U26-001 dissolved oxygen logger that was mounted in a freshwater environment in this pond here called Grannis Pond in the western part of Connecticut. We've recorded some data for a period of time, approximately a week and a half, and we went to the site and offloaded our data, and now we want to have a look at what that data looks like. So we have the dissolved oxygen data offloaded, and we're in the plot setup screen here, and we're going to run the dissolved oxygen data assistant to post-process this data to get the adjusted concentration. So let's click on process, and we'll see here's our dissolved oxygen data assistant. We don't need to adjust for salinity. This was fresh water. I'm not going to get percent saturation, so I don't need to put in the barometric data either. I do want to create a new series called dissolved oxygen adjusted concentration. So that's what we're doing over here. We're going to put in we're going to use dissolved oxygen meter readings to calibrate our data. Basically, what we're doing is we're removing any drift from fouling. That's the idea behind doing this. Our starting calibration point, I'm going to leave that unchecked because this was we just calibrated at the factory, and we knew it was pretty. It was nice and steady, nice and clean, brand new sensor cap. But we are going to put an ending calibration point in. So here's all our data points from our deployment. We deployed the logger on the 30th of August, and we read it out on the 10th. So I'm going to use the last recorded value, which it was at 1 p.m. on the 10th. And we want to put in we had a meter, an Orion 5-star. It's from Thermo Scientific, and it's a calibrated dissolved oxygen meter, and our value was 8.49 milligrams per liter. We put it in the water right next to this logger and let it stabilize for a few minutes. And now we're going to click on Create New Series. So now what we see is we have our raw dissolved oxygen concentration. We have our temperature that was recorded, and again, we can display it in US or in Fahrenheit or Celsius if we want. DO, we can show it in parts per million or milligrams per liter. And here is our data series that we created with our post-processing DO adjusted concentration. So let's click on plot. So here is our data over that time period. The blue is our temperature, so we can see how it changes each day based on changes in temperature in the air. One thing that I want to call your attention to is we can see at the beginning of the deployment our dissolved oxygen, our raw dissolved oxygen, and our adjusted concentration. They're reading extremely close to each other, in some places exactly the same value, but as we go along they separate a bit. That's an indication of fouling from it's biofouling. So we were getting some slime on there from the pond. There's a lot of organic material in that pond. So that's what this is indicating. So doing that field calibration corrected for that that fouling. And when we pulled the logger out, we cleaned it and we put it back in. We left the loggers logging. We'll read them out in another couple of months to see how our long-term data was. But for right now, this is just an interim readout. Make sure everything's working okay. One thing we can tell from this data is it looks like this habitat for fish is fine. We were around 10 when we started, and as we're going along, we can see our temperatures going down. But we're still 8.5, a couple of small excursions downward. You'll notice there's a spike right here. We can put in a crosshairs right there. And we can see it went down to about 4 milligrams per liter. I looked at the historical weather data, and that corresponds to a rainstorm and also kind of a dip in barometric pressure. So that could have explained this dip here, but it recovered nicely. It was no problem. The other thing too is you see a little spike right here where it goes up to about 11, and this corresponds to a very windy day. The day was very, very windy. There was gusts to 30 miles an hour. So that could, and again, there was a change in barometric pressure. The pressure was quite high that day, so that could be affecting this DO level as well. But for the most part, this habitat looks pretty good for our fish.